is the most overrated player on every NFL team? Welcome, football fans. In this video, I give you my opinion on the most overrated player, overhyped player, overvalued player on your favorite team. An overrated player is one that doesn't live up to their reputation. He simply does not produce to his popularity. Gronk, spike the like button, and let's begin in the AFC East with the Buffalo Bills. Their most overrated player is a new player. His name is Joey Bosa, a big name in the game of football. His brother Nick Bosa is one of the best edge rushers in football. And at one time, Joey Bosa was consistently seen as a top 10 edge rusher, which means he's now overrated because last year he graded as the 71st best edge rusher in football. He did play enough games to have a sample size. He played 14 games and yet only did produce 5 sacks. So, I'm not saying Joey Bosa, with a little bit more health, with a little bit more time to prepare for this season, and a scheme change in Buffalo, and a little bit of motivation for a championship, that Joey Bosa couldn't get back to closer to prime form. But coming off his worst season easily of his NFL career, where he was only 52nd in PFF's pass rush productivity grade, the 52nd best pass rusher in football at his position, that's not the Joey Bosa we're used to. So easily right now, only 28 games in 3 years, consistently banged up and not producing to his popularity, Joey Bosa is the most overrated player on the Buffalo Bills. On the Miami Dolphins, the most overrated player is Devon Achane. And the reason I say that is because if you exist in the fantasy football circles, you would think this was the next coming of LaDainian Tomlinson. You would think this guy had multi-time 100 reception seasons, he was a 1,500-yard rusher, and he could go for 30 rushing touchdowns. That's the way that he is spoken of in these circles. But when you really dive deeper into him as a product in real-life football, and you get away from the artificial, where he is a home run hitter, he is extremely fast, Achane is not very good in terms of missing tackles or forcing missed tackles. He was 31st in that category in the NFL. He was also only 37th in PFF's elusive rating. As a running back that makes people miss, he is not that at all. He is pure speed. And if he doesn't have that lane blocked up for him, he's not effective. So to me, he's overrated because he can catch the ball, he's electric when he has space, but if you don't provide him space, he goes nowhere. And he doesn't have the power necessary to move the pile. He actually generates Miami to become more of a soft team than they already are. That's why I'm not a huge fan of him. Okay, and according to Pro Football Reference, he only broke 1 tackle on every 29 attempts. That's simply not good enough. So to me, he's looked at as one of the best running backs, but to me, he's not. On the New England Patriots, I think Kyle Dugger is the most overrated player. I love Kyle Dugger. The Patriots are my team. But last year, Kyle Dugger was abysmal in the secondary for New England. He graded as the 96th best safety in football with a 44 grade, and he was the 3rd lowest graded safety in the NFL. That is despicable for a player that is thought of as one of the 20 best safeties in the NFL, or at one time was at least being looked at that way, even by me, okay? He was the lowest graded Patriots safety. He had the lowest coverage grade in the entire league, I think, okay? And he only forced 1 turnover last year. Dugger was missing more tackles than usual and just generally not in positions to make plays like he was before. Now, maybe what happened was he lost Bill Belichick. Maybe what happened was he was discouraged by the culture and the environment under Gerard Mayo. Maybe he just had a bad year. Or maybe some of these injuries, these nagging injuries, are adding up. I'm not sure, but Kyle Dugger was bad last year. He could be a bounce back candidate, but right now he is overrated. And the New York Jets' most overrated player is easily Justin Fields. I tried to find somebody else, but this guy is just consistently thought of at a higher level than he actually plays at. I don't know what it is, if it's his college career, if it's his potential that doesn't really exist, but Justin Fields is a 14-30 quarterback in the NFL. That means he has 30 losses and 14 victories. He has 0 seasons with more than 5 wins. He has a career 83 passer rating and 45 touchdowns to 31 picks. He also leads the NFL in sack percentage since becoming a starter in the league. The worst at taking sacks in football. And he also fumbles the ball a ton. 44 times in the NFL, he's let go of 12 in total. So Justin Fields is just not a productive passer. He is a good athlete, aesthetically a cool looking guy, but overall, not a good player. So to me, he is very overrated, even just simply by having a starting role in the NFL right now. Moving to the AFC North. The Baltimore Ravens' most overrated player is still a good player, but he is overrated. That's Mark Andrews. He's still graded as a top 10 tight end in the NFL last year, according to PFF. But when you look a little bit closer, he's not the player he used to be, meaning he's not elite at the position. He had the lowest yards per game since his rookie season. He had the lowest receptions per game since his rookie season. In yak yards after catch, he had the 4th lowest at the position, tight end. And he was also weirdly the lowest in terms of an in-line percentage, which means the lowest tight end snap percentage playing beside a tackle. He was basically playing wide receiver last year. So he's not explosive. He's putting up less production. And honestly, he might be the second best tight end on his own team right now in terms of receiving. So yeah, he had a lot of touchdowns, but consistency and even some big time drops in the playoffs, I think he's overrated right now. And I like Mark Andrews. Cam Taylor-Britt is overrated for the Bengals. I looked at Cam Taylor-Britt at one time as one of the more underrated corners in football, but last year he stunk it up. He was 65th in Pro Football Focus grade. He is never ranked higher than 52nd in his career, which is not great for a CB1 in the NFL. He also has been very hit and miss. Sometimes he has great interceptions and great plays on the football. Other times he's been straight out benched. Last year he was benched for certain moments in games. He allowed the 15th lowest passer rating in the NFL with a over 118 passer rating allowed. He also allowed 10 touchdowns last season, which was the most in the NFL, and he allowed the 8th most receiving yards. So Cam Taylor-Britt, absolutely overrated for the Bengals. Shedeur Sanders hasn't played a snap in the NFL, but he's already ridiculously overrated. I covered this in a reaction to Colin Cowherd, and I had all the Shedeur stands come out of the woodwork. It was actually impressive. But Shedeur is the most overrated 5th-round pick of a quarterback I've ever seen. He is completely overhyped. He's probably the 4th most talented quarterback on his own team, roster, and depth chart, and yet he's being viewed as the savior of the franchise. He's being viewed as a guy you want to buy his jersey, and he might not even make the team. That's all I really got to say about Shedeur Sanders, right? He doesn't have a physical skill that overwhelms any defense in the NFL, and he is extremely overrated in terms of his processing capabilities. So Shedeur Sanders is already overrated. Minkah Fitzpatrick, to me, is the most overrated Pittsburgh Steeler. I had different answers from different people when I asked this question, but Minkah, to me, has just been underwhelming from a production standpoint for Pittsburgh, right? He has 1 pick in 2 seasons, despite the fact that he has been a Pro Bowler in 3 straight years. I'm not exactly sure who's voting for Minkah Fitzpatrick as a Pro Bowler, but that's a lack of ball production for a free safety that was kind of known for that at one point in his career. And honestly, he's only got his hands on the ball 8 total times in 2 seasons, which is just not good enough. He was the 44th graded safety last season, and he wasn't top 30 in coverage grade or run defense grade. He's had a kind of a mediocre season the last 2 years. So I think Minkah Fitzpatrick has been steadily overrated, and not a lot of people are talking about it. Christian Kirk is the most overrated player, a new arrival to the Houston Texans. This one was difficult. I couldn't really figure it out, but Kirk is somebody that's widely regarded as a very good number 2 wide receiver in the NFL, But the last couple of years, he hasn't exactly been great. Last season in particular, he was only the 64th graded wide receiver in 2024, and he was 48th the year previous. So for a guy that maybe at times has put up top 32 production, he's not quite there. Plus, he's very limited in his skill set. He's basically a slot wide receiver only. Last year, he only played 74 of 337 snaps out wide, and he was 43rd in yards per route run, 48th in yak per reception. And he only had 379 yards in 8 games, right? That was his worst season since 2020 in Arizona. So Kirk had his worst season in a while. He's coming off some injuries, he's slowing down, and he's not very versatile. So to me, that makes him a bit overrated, and I wouldn't be surprised if other Texans' younger, youthful receivers outshined him in 2025. Michael Pittman Jr. for the Colts, I think, is also overrated at wide receiver. Last year, he had only 69 receptions on 111 targets, which is not a good conversion rate. 808 yards, which was the worst season, I think, in a long time for him. I mean, that's the lowest yards, receptions, and first downs since his rookie season. And I would argue that he's not even the best receiver on his team, but he's widely accepted as that. He's the highest paid receiver on his team. I think Josh Downs is the better player right now, and I don't think people recognize that. So I do think Michael Pittman is overrated. Trevor Lawrence is also extremely overrated, okay? Not only is his hair game overrated, but also his quarterback play. Last year, he was 19th graded at quarterback, but he's always widely accepted as an up-and-coming threat to break out, and he's just consistently been below average to mid. Okay, he has never been higher than 11th graded in the NFL, which was his second year in the league, by far his most productive, best effort where he was able to take Jacksonville to the playoffs. Otherwise, he has a career record of 22-38, which includes his second season. He has an 85 passer rating, which is very Daniel Jones-ish. 11 touchdowns to 7 picks last season is not very impressive. 21 touchdowns to 14 picks the year before that. So the last 2 years, he has 21 interceptions and 32 touchdowns. That's not very good. I mean, and he's just kind of inconsistent from his mind and decision-making. He's inconsistent from his short and intermediate accuracy. And I just feel like he is just a little robotic. I just don't think that his talent is on the level that people think it is. So Trevor Lawrence, I think, is overrated and kind of always has been. Next, L'Jarius Sneed, a guy that I was raving about after last year as one of, if not the best corner in football last season. Completely disappointed when he got traded to Tennessee. Now, a lot of this has to do with his off-the-field issues, but on top of this, he was graded with a 36 grade by PFF as one of, if not the worst corner in the NFL, okay? I don't know why or how, because his stats aren't really that bad. But, when you dive deeper into the film, there are times where he just straight up abandons his assignments and he looks completely lost. And there are even plays where they're not completions, but he gets burnt like toast. So he did allow the highest yards per completion of his career, which was one stat that I could find. This is probably a bounce back candidate, but he needs to screw his head on straight before that can happen. Next, Talanoa Hufanga of the Denver Broncos. I felt he was a little bit overrated in San Francisco, and I think he is overrated in Denver as well. He's only had one great season in his career, which accumulated in an all-pro year, right? But other than that, he's been extremely injured, banged up, and just inconsistent. He was 73rd graded at safety this past year when he did play, and he puts himself in harm's way too much. He goes for too many crazy tackles and oftentimes misses those tackles. And his coverage grades have been hit and miss, up and down. He's a ball hawk type that sometimes can get beat for explosive plays. Hufanga is, I think, a calculated risk to be let go by the 49ers. And the Broncos have taken that risk for his upside. I understand, but I also feel like he's kind of overrated because of that. Patrick Mahomes is the most overrated player on the Chiefs. People still think he's the best quarterback in the NFL, and yet he has pretty much produced nowhere near his popularity or his reputation. He was the 8th graded quarterback according to PFF last year. And when you look at the main statistics, he was 7th in passing yards, 10th in completion percentage, 9th in touchdowns, and 18th in big time throws. This guy was nowhere near one of the top 5 producers at the position last year, and he got slaughtered in the Super Bowl. Mahomes has been declining since 2022. He's not the player he once was, and people still kind of treat him like that. So I think he is overrated. I mean, when you're the biggest name in the sport and you're not producing like it, you're probably overrated. I think that's fair. Justin Herbert is the most overrated Charger. Herbert had a good year last year, and I think he was capable of being ranked inside the top 7 or 8 quarterbacks in the NFL. But there are some fans that rank Justin Herbert as if he is Dan Marino. I mean, they talk about Justin Herbert like he is a gift from football heaven, and they put him in the top 3 or 4 in the NFL, despite not producing a playoff victory in his entire career. And he's had enough of a time in the NFL to at least do that, okay? That being said, he has a 41-38 record in the NFL, which is pretty pedestrian and average. And last year, he only ranked 9th in passing yards and 12th in touchdowns. He did have an excellent big-time throw to interception ratio. He also had an excellent touchdown interception ratio. He also, has only had one 100 rating season, which was actually last year, thanks to his great touchdown interception ratio. He led the NFL in interception percentage, so he took care of the football. But at the same time, the guy is not producing in the big moments. And I think he is very athletic. He is very capable of all things on a football field, but he does not do it regularly, which is where I think people are misguided with his play. So to me, Herbert is a very good player, but there's just certain people that think he's like this incredible, unbelievable talent that he just doesn't seem to match up with my eyes. Next, Michael Mayer is the most overrated Las Vegas Raider. This guy is mostly overrated due to his college career and his college hype at the tight end position. Last year, he was arguably the worst tight end in the NFL, and he's still being treated as a breakout candidate according to PFF. That's at least what they listed him as, the breakout tight end of 2025. Good luck. Last year, he was second lowest in the NFL in YAC, 2.2 yards after the catch. 156 total yards in a season last year with only 7.4 yards per reception, and he had the lowest yards per route run in the entire NFL. That's bad. Okay, the Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott is their most overrated player. I considered Trayvon Diggs as well, but I think Dak is a weird one because certain people will underrate Dak to a certain degree and think he's trash or terrible or no good. But where he does become overrated is his production, his consistency, combined with his value, which he has an extreme contract. Like, his contract does not match his play. His contract does not match where he ranks in the NFL. It's nowhere even close. Last year, he just straight up wasn't that good, right? He had 11 touchdowns to 8 picks, and he's just constantly been up and down. 2023 was his best season of his career. Like, he was a top 4. He was actually second in MVP voting, if I'm not mistaken. And he was probably like a top 5 or top 4 quarterback producer in the entire NFL in terms of statistics, right? Like, he went from leading the NFL in touchdowns in 2023 to stinking it up in 2024. And the year before 2023, like 2 of his last 3 years, he's been bad. In 2022, he led the NFL in interceptions. So, like, Dak has just constantly been up and down. And then when you look at his playoff success, he's 2-5 in the playoffs. That's simply not good enough for America's team. Kayvon Thibodeau is the most overrated New York Giant. Only 42nd in PFF grade. There's a reason why they did draft and decide to go with Abdul Carter. Despite being drafted in the top 5 himself at one time, Kayvon Thibodeau's never lived up to that billing. 11.5 sacks in 2023 was by far his best campaign. His other 2 were pretty disappointing. 5.5 in 2024 last year, 57th in pro football pass rush productivity, 38 pressures, which ranked 50th in the NFL. And this is not a guy that's played in a rotation. He plays a lot, and he does not produce at that level. So, yeah, 2 out of his 3 years just have not been productive. He is more of a volume king over an efficiency master as a pass rusher, and he's just mid. And he isn't really viewed that way. So I think he's the most overrated player on the Giants. For the Philadelphia Eagles, Jalen Hurts is the most overrated player. Mostly kind of like Justin Herbert, where he's good, don't get me wrong, but people talk about him like he is a top 3, 4, 5 quarterback in the NFL. Like, he's just not. Just because he wins the Super Bowl and is on the best team in football does not mean he is an elite quarterback. If you actually watched last year's regular season, A.J. Brown was complaining about the Eagles' passing game for a reason. His quarterback was not playing well. And yes, Jalen Hurts has been able to play his best in the biggest moments. He was able to do that last year in the NFC Championship and in the Super Bowl. He played great football. But he has been arguably the weakness of the team at times, which is not a top 5, top 6, top 7 quarterback. If you want to put him in the 8 to 12 range, I totally understand that. But he is not in that category of guys like Lamar and Allen and Mahomes and, even Stafford, in my opinion. Like, this guy, even statistically, 16th in big-time throws with 22, 19 turnover-worthy plays, which was tied with Caleb Williams. He had the longest time to throw in the NFL, which speaks to his support, having the best offensive line in the league, masking his issues. And then he also has the 34th, one of the worst pressure to sack percentages. He holds onto the ball way too long. So yeah, Jalen Hurts, he's a good player, but he has a lot of flaws. They just aren't really recognized because he plays on an all-star team. Next, Deebo Samuel is the most overrated Washington Commander. This one hurts me to say, loving Deebo throughout his career, but it's been evident over the last couple of seasons, especially this past year. 670 yards and 3 touchdowns on 51 catches in San Francisco last year. He does only have one 1,000-yard receiving season, and I understand Deebo has basically been a halfback / wide receiver, right? He's been the wide back of the 49ers, meaning he'll run and catch the ball, which means that 1,000 yards receiving is probably not exactly a great measurement for him. But to be honest, that's not great. Like, that's where you kind of lose that steam. And that's where San Francisco became sick of him, is he's just not a great overall receiver. Like, his routes are not that crisp. He has never been a separator, and he's largely relied on the scheme to get him open. That's honestly it. And you look at Deebo producing last year, his lowest receptions per game since his rookie season. He had 7 games under 25 receiving yards, which is bad, right? And he was 55th in yards per route run. So this is not the same player that he used to be. He's not nearly as dynamic. He's still a threat after the catch, and there's evidence in that in his yak per reception numbers. But as a pure receiver, he is underwhelming right now. Rome Odunze is one of the most overrated young receivers in the NFL. I also saw him on the PFF breakout list, and Rome is a solid talent, but for him to be ranked in the draft process over guys like, some people had him number 1 in the class, which was outrageous, but for him to be ranked over Malik Neighbors by most people, for him to be ranked, over a guy like Brian Thomas, which never made sense to me, like Rome Odunze was very average as a rookie and actually did not get better as the season went on, which concerns me, right? 54 catches, 734 yards, and 3 touchdowns don't sound bad, but he did play all 17 games. He was only 79th in PFF grade, which is a wide receiver 3 quality player, right? And he only had one 75-plus yard game from week 9 to week 17. So over the last 8 weeks of the season, he did not produce like a first-round pick. He doesn't look like that on the field. He's not great. He's not super fast. He's not really that quick. Like, his biggest and best skill is his hands and his contested ability, but he really didn't show it off that much. So Rome Odunze, to me, is overrated. For the Detroit Lions, I went with DJ Reader because he joined the Lions last year off a major injury, and that was a concern. And he regressed as an overall player. He wasn't the same destructive run defense force that he was in Cincinnati. He did have 3 sacks, which was the most sacks in a season of his career, but he's never been known as a pass rusher. In fact, last year he was 52nd in pressures and 66th in pass rush productivity. So he was still not a very good pass rusher. But where he disappointed was his overall ability to stop the run. His ability to stop the run, he was only 36th overall in PFF grade and was not that dominant nose tackle that we've known him to be. Maybe it was a scheme change, a coaching change. Maybe it was the injury thing, or it's age, right? Like, this is a guy that he's 30 now. So maybe he's just not the same player he used to be. Jordan Love is overrated for the Green Bay Packers. 20th in quarterback grade for PFF last year, 25th in big time throw percentage for a quarterback who's known for throwing the ball in tight windows, and that being his biggest and best skill is his ability to rip the ball down the field. He didn't showcase that too often last year. He regressed in year 2, going from really, really promising year 1 and even very impressive stats to underwhelming year 2, inconsistent, injured, up and down, bad decision-making, poor games against good teams. And to me, Jordan Love is a guy that feasts against bad teams. And we even didn't see a lot of a drop-off from Jordan Love to Malik Willis, which is concerning. He also has just consistency issues. His decision-making and his accuracy do underwhelm me at times, so I had him as an overrated player. Javon Hargrave was my pick for the Vikings' most overrated player. I've watched him closely in San Francisco the last couple of seasons, and his numbers have still looked pretty good, but I don't think it's a coincidence that the 49ers dropped off significantly as a run defense when they had Javon Hargrave, right? Like, I don't think it's a coincidence that they dropped off and regressed in 2023 on their way to losing a Super Bowl. And he only had a 44.7 run defense grade last year and a 49 run defense grade in 2023. Below 50. So he is a bad run defender with undisciplined rushing lanes. And as a pass rusher, he's more of a sack producer than a consistent pressure force. So to me, Javon Hargrave is aging, coming off a major injury, and still being paid like a solid starter. I'm not really sure because he is deficient in one area of the game. Kyle Pitts of the Atlanta Falcons is super overrated. I mean, people still look at him as a guy that could break out and become a superstar, and I just haven't seen it, right? 44th graded tight end in 2024. That's like not good. I mean, there's 32 starters. He's somewhere in the backup range, in the middle of the backup range. He doesn't block, so he's clearly like, it's hard to scheme around him because you can't really run the ball with him on the field that efficiently because he's not an overwhelming run blocking force. He doesn't play on the line, under a 15% in-line percentage, which was one of the lowest in the NFL. A 2.5 yak per reception, which was third worst in the NFL. So he's not good at blocking. He doesn't play in line, and he's also not good at missing tackles. Like, he's not good at forcing missed tackles. And then 17th in yards per route run is okay. Maybe some could argue he's being misused with his ADOT being so high, but at the same time, he was 7th worst in passer rating. So like, he's not efficient with his volume. He's not efficient with his targets that he does get. He's not good at creating after the catch, and he doesn't block. I mean, what does he bring to the table here other than a cool looking fast tight end? J.C. Horn is kind of the most overrated Panther by default. There aren't a lot of overrated Panthers. There aren't a lot of players that stand out as being popular. J.C. Horn is just maybe a touch overrated because he was paid a ridiculous contract despite not playing a lot of games in the NFL. I mean, he's played 37 games in 4 seasons. And despite that, he was paid the highest cornerback contract in the entire league, which is crazy considering he has 1 pick in the last 21 games. He also had a pedestrian 92 passer rating allowed in a Pro Bowl season where he also allowed 6 touchdowns. So he's a good player. He is being conservative, a top 15 corner in the league, but he's being paid like he's the best. He's being discussed as if he's elite, and I don't really see him that way. I think he's good, but not a great player, and honestly, the Panthers don't have a lot of choices. Cameron Jordan is the most overrated New Orleans Saint. This one was pretty easy. He's just not the same player he used to be, and he's still one of the biggest names at the position. He's a very popular player. 87th graded in 2024. That was his first bad year of his career, like outright bad. Like, he was a bad player. He was 89th in run defense grade, which is extremely concerning because he's always been one of the best edge setters in football. So for that to dip is really, really concerning. 97th in pass rush grade. He's never been a great pass rusher, but that is bad. And then obviously only 6 sacks in the last 34 games. So in the last 2 seasons, He has 6 sacks. Yeah, Cameron Jordan's kind of washed, guys. Hassan Reddick is the most overrated Tampa Bay Buccaneer, and this was decided upon once I read all the fans' comments. I mean, a lot of people from Buccaneers, from the Bucs Nation there, from the crew, they're telling me that Hassan Reddick is this going to be game-changing defender on their defensive line. And I'm just not sure. Like, he's a bit of a head case, first of all. He doesn't know whether he wants to be there or not be there. He's rarely actually committed in recent history. Now, at the same time, he has 1 sack in 10 games last year, and he was wildly inefficient. Like, bad. He dropped off the face of the earth. Okay, he had a minimum 11 sacks from 2020 through 2023, and he had only 1 in 10 games last year, and he was graded 102nd in the entire NFL. Sure, he still has a lot of upside left in his game, but he is undersized, not a great edge setter, and his sack percentages and sack numbers dipped significantly. So I'm not sure he's the same player or this player that's going to transform Tampa Bay the way that their fans think. That's why I put him on the list. The Arizona Cardinals' most overrated player, I thought about Kyler, but Kyler is kind of so overrated that he's become underrated at this point, in my opinion. So Marvin Harrison Jr. was my selection. 62 catches, 885 yards, 8 touchdowns, and only 52 yards per game as a rookie who is expected to dominate the NFL. This guy was expected to be Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson type of player in his first season, and he was nowhere close. He was worse than McConkey. He was worse than Thomas, Neighbors. He was worse than quite a few rookie wide receivers last season. And to me, he just never popped off in terms of his speed was underwhelming, his route running, his separation skills, underwhelming, his overall ability to be a reliable, consistent catcher of the football for Kyler Murray with only a 53% catch percentage. That speaks to a poor connection. He was 10th worst in yak in the NFL. He does not create with the ball in his hands. And he was 50th in yards per route run. He was just not a number 1 wide receiver the way that we expected him to be. And he's still being drafted in fantasy as if he's going to have a huge year this year. He might be better, but I don't expect him to be this upper echelon player. Kyren Williams was very overrated last year, and I had him in every fantasy league. But as an actual football player, let's not talk about the rushing numbers and the touchdowns, because he had that due to volume. If he did not have the volume and you looked at efficiency, Kyren Williams was one of the worst starting running backs in the entire NFL. 38th in PFF grade, speaks for itself. He played the second most snaps at the position, so you give him credit for that. But he was 42nd in yards after contact per attempt. 42nd in the NFL, okay? He only had 6 15-plus yard runs on 362 snaps. Just not an explosive player. And he was, 5 fumbles. He also put the ball on the ground a ton last year. So couldn't hold on to the ball, couldn't create explosive plays, and couldn't create yards after contact. Kyren was just a volume vulture last year. He was not good. Kyle Juszczyk is the most overrated 49er. He's been viewed as the best fullback in the NFL consistently, but honestly is kind of like not even a good piece of the offense anymore. Like, I feel like every time he's on the field, they get less efficient. He's not a receiving option the way that you would want. He's not an overwhelming blocker at this stage of his career. He's just really like a legacy player at this point that Kyle keeps around because he's a great locker room presence and a great person, but I don't know if he's actually that good at football anymore. He used to be incredible, but he's probably a Hall of Fame fullback. 9 straight Pro Bowls. But again, he's had 9 straight, so that means he's had the last 2 years where he's kind of dipped in his overall ability. Only 226 yards in the last 3 years straight or less. So he's not producing yards. He's not really the same blocker. And he, just not the same tool to use in an offense, not the same weapon to use in an offense. So to me, he's overrated. And the final overrated player for the Seattle Seahawks, Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp is the most overrated Seahawk. He returns home to Seattle, but he has not produced like the Cooper Kupp we know since 2022, right? In 2022, he was great on a per game basis, but even then he was injured a lot. In 2021, that was the last time he had a 1,000-yard season. And it was his only Pro Bowl season of his career, 2021. Yet he's talked about as a future Hall of Famer, which I don't know because he's only really had one great year. I don't think he is at that level, right? He's regressed for the last 4 straight seasons in the NFL. 5 of his last 7 games last year were under 30 yards receiving. And that's with Matthew Stafford throwing him the ball, who loves Cooper Kupp and has so much rapport and chemistry with him. Imagine him with a guy that doesn't have that same level of rapport or consistency, right? I mean, he's just not going to be the player that I think Seahawks fans expect him to be, 33rd in yards per route run. If he did that again, I think Seahawks fans would be happy. But he's not a top 32 receiver anymore. He's not really a top end number 2. He's kind of more of like a middling 2 to a high end 3, in my opinion. So that's why I think he's overrated. There it is, guys, the most overrated player on every NFL team entering 2025. Thank you for watching. It's Mitch of The Bottom Line View. If you enjoyed this, go check out my other new NFL channel. It's BLV Beyond. I'll put the link in the pinned comment. Guys, go subscribe. I'm starting to build that up for video essays on that channel. I'm excited. Thanks for watching. Peace.